Getting proper mental health care can help you feel more like you. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, insomnia, relationship issues, workplace stress, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can use your FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
ACAST powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, I'm Kim Holderness.
And I'm Ben Holderness.
We host the Holderness Family Podcast every Tuesday.
You may know us from the silly videos that we make online.
Or a book about marriage called Everybody Fights.
Or as winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race.
Still can't believe that happened. Listen, we do a lot of stuff, but our podcast is our most favorite thing.
Yeah, because every week we get to sit down face-to-face, talk to each other about marriage, family, mental health, or just anything that we want to know more about.
Sometimes we have expert interviews, sometimes it's just us, but our goal is to bring some joy and laughter into your life every week.
Our other goal is that maybe you will learn something as well.
Right. So search the Holderness Family Podcast and check out our most recent episodes. We have one about staying organized with creators of the Home Edit.
And one about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
We hope you'll join us.
ACAST helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hello, Kathy here, and this is the Cinemile, the podcast where we record our walk home from the movies. But today's episode is actually a bonus episode from our Patreon feed, patreon.com/Cinemile, where we do all of our TV reviews and retro movie reviews. And The Last of Us has just begun on Sky Atlantic and HBO. Dave has played all the video games, I have not, and we've decided to cover it regularly over on our Patreon feed. And we decided as a bonus to put our discussion about the first episode onto our main feed. So enjoy and come follow us on Patreon for lots more chats about The Last of Us and other TV like Kaleidoscope, which we've just finished, and Welcome to Chippendales, which we are loving. See you there.
Hello, patrons.
Hello.
It's us. We're here. TV back. TV is on our TV is here.
HBO Sunday Night is back, and we're
So-
here to talk about episode 1
Of The Last of Us. Yeah, so I was super, super excited about this show. This is one of my, if not my favourite video game of all time. From a narrative point of view, I think it's the best video game. Both of them. I loved those games. And this is by Craig Mazin, who made Chernobyl.
Yeah, any of our long-term patrons will know we did a huge episode, if not episodes.
We did a big spoiler special on that.
Chernobyl, yeah, when it
so you
aired
can scroll back there.
a couple of years ago. We love Craig Mason, who wrote
It's a great
it.
show.
He has also now directed the first episode of this, so I am not... I've never played the video game. I've seen extracts of Dave playing it, and Dave has... Sadly, now that there's a TV show out about it, told me a lot about the overarching story of the video game.
I think I told you about the end of the first one, but that was nearly 10 years ago. So
I know
you have a terrible memory.
You also told me loads about the second one. You were playing it to the point where I was like, "You've just stopped telling me because this is really boring to just hear someone tell me about a video game." However,
so good, though.
So we've different. I'm interested because it's A, Craig Mason, and B, because it's in the HBO Sunday night slot, which means it will be brilliant TV because they wouldn't put there otherwise. And Dave's interested because of the game, and we have just watched the first episode.
Yes,
and both really enjoyed it.
And I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, and we thought we definitely need to speak about this with our patrons because you will definitely all be watching it.
Yeah, and as you should, because it's really, really good.
Brilliant,
so we're going to
yeah.
spoil the first episode.
So
here.
don't listen, but do go and watch it if you've not. It's on Sky Atlantic over in the UK, or it's on HBO in the States. We both really enjoyed it. When we first turned it on and it said it was like an hour and 13 minutes, I groaned. Reader, listener, I was not happy. And actually it completely swept me away. I didn't mind the duration at all.
Well, it's kind of, and I doubt this is
brilliant
gonna be,
pilot.
It spends a lot of time, as the first game did, with the sort of the prologue, right? That's the daughter.
And full spoilers here again for
full
episode
spoilers.
1.
This is
been warned.
with Joel's daughter. And I don't want to play that whole thing where I'm like, oh, it was this was the same.
You can't
this was
help
different.
yourself.
I'm not going to do that. But
but he did do it to me as we watched.
But
it.
naturally, I did it every 5 seconds. That game opens like in exactly the same way, and so far it's very, very faithful to the game, right down to the music. It's got the exact same score, same logo.
I don't know why that surprises you. It has beautiful music, like no sane.
It's
a
just
director would change
when things
music.
get adapted. Often, I think people want to put their own stamp on it. But I think importantly, Neil Druckmann, who is the sort of creative director of the two video games and wrote the story, he's co-creator with Craig Mazin. So it feels like this is his baby, and he has brought it to life with Craig Mazin. So rather than, I think traditionally, if you brought in new writers and new directors and they were just adapting a thing, they'd probably really want to put their own stamp on it.
I think the difference here though is you have absolutely revered source material, which more often than not video games aren't revered like this.
Well, but
like,
also,
as someone who doesn't play video games, I know all about, and it's not just because of you, I know all about how narratively satisfying, how beautiful, how incredible The Last of Us is.
And I think importantly, it's a funny one because it's hard to even describe it as a video game adaptation, because as a video game it is so heavily influenced by the quality of movies and TV, then it's almost like it's picking up the baton back. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it's a very narratively driven story. It's kind of like, it's not an open world game. It's not Grand Theft Auto where you can just go and do everything. Mm-hmm. It's very much Neil Druckmann telling a story.
I have seen a lot of it, because as I was watching it there, I was like having flashbacks to you playing the game and you showing me stuff. But the casting is fantastic.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal.
He's
in
so
two of the biggest shows on
amazing.
TV. So for anyone who doesn't know, he's the man under the Mandalorian's helmet.
He's also
now
in
he's Joel,
one of my favourite movies of last year, which was
the Nicolas Cage one.
Yeah.
The fantastic talent, the unbearable weight of massive talent.
He's so brilliant. I was saying to Dave, like, he's so brilliant, and I feel like, having only briefly looked at the video game, he like perfectly plays the character, but it's also jarring in every scene, like how at every point he's just 100% at all times sexy and smouldering.
Yeah,
like, he can't help like he can't help it.
He can't turn
he's
it off.
just so attractive, but he's brilliant as an action hero. He's brilliant as a father. He's brilliant as like a rough and tumble kind of, I guess, army man. He's brilliant. He's so good. Like, this show rests very comfortably on his back.
Yeah,
I can't imagine someone else was even in the running.
Very iconic backpack. It's like Joel stepped out of the video game and walked onto the screen.
And then Anna Torv, who we love from Fringe, and
she plays Tess.
Mindhunter. And then I'm really smug, because I said to Dave, the second Joel's daughter came on, I was like, within 2 minutes, I was like, that's Thandie Newton's daughter. Yeah, it has to be.
Incredible catch.
Like, I've never seen a child look more like its parent, other than maybe Kate, what's Goldie Hawn's daughter called again?
Kate Hudson.
Like, that's quite uncanny as well. Yeah. It's rare that a child looks that like one of their parents.
It is remarkable, yeah.
It's remarkable, and she's brilliant, and I know she's a Nepo baby, but she was brilliant.
Because we were both, because as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, looks really like her.
I'm like, did they CGI Thandie Newton to make her look like a kid?
It's like, we're also what started the Welcome to Chippendales show, and we watched the first episode of that
on Disney Plus. To come in an upcoming What We've Been watching.
We'll talk about that in a later episode. But this actor came on, and we were like, wow, he looks so like Dan Stevens.
I was like, it's like an ugly version of Dan Stevens.
And then then we kept going on, and then he'd take off his glasses, and then we'd remark to each other without his sunglasses, like, no, actually, when he takes the sunglasses off, he doesn't really look much like Dan Stevens anymore. And then there was this lighting on him during the day, and it was like, oh, right, now he does. Now it's clearly not Dan Stevens. Yeah. Anyway, the credits come up, featuring Dan Stevens, which talked ourselves around in circles.
And then the other star, the main star of the show, who will be the main star, Ellie, who is, of course,
played by Bella Ramsey.
All of our listeners,
two Game of Thrones alumni there.
Yeah, and all of our listeners, or most of our listeners, did watch Game of Thrones, and even for a Game of Thrones viewer like myself, who's only watched it once and wasn't like obsessed with it the way other people were.
She really made an impression.
Really made an impression.
Yeah.
And what she's also in that I really want to watch is the movie that Lena Dunham directed last year. That has the word birdie in it, and don't ask me what the rest of it is. Which is on Prime, and I do want to watch that because I think Lena Dunham's a really great director. But anyway, I'm really interested to watch the rest of this series because I'm not into post-apocalyptic things and I'm not into zombies, and this is like, well, it's not zombie, it basically is zombie. So without the hook of Craig Mazin and probably Pedro Pascal, I don't think I'd have watched it. But you're obsessed, so I'll watch it with you. What's
interesting to me is that this show is coming after The Walking Dead just finished after 10 years, right? 10 or 11, 12. And honestly, I mean, this is essentially a zombie thing as well, and there is a lot of overlap, I think, in its themes and its subject matters.
The world's very interesting, though, that they've drawn for us. Like, I'm compelled to see more of the world.
Well, I mean, my preference is, I mean, I went off the Walking Dead bandwagon a long time ago, but I think...
But you were at a point in time obsessed with it.
No, I think that show, I was never obsessed with it. I if you remember correctly, I had a very love-hate relationship with that show.
And yet you watched it for like 8 seasons.
Yeah, but it was like an abusive relationship.
Yeah, I remember.
I was this is awful. It's just people plodding around being boring.
But a zombie show is...
But then it would be brilliant at the end.
But a zombie show is, or any post-apocalyptic thing or any pandemic thing, is as good as the relationship setups and what people do in those situations.
That's what I'm trying to get at. In that they cover a lot of the same ground. People are the real bad guys. It's not the zombies. You know what I mean? Because that's boring. They're just background.
I also think it's launched at a perfect time, right? Because before now, Walking Dead would have still been on, or Fear the Walking Dead, or whatever the hell that show was. And then also, if it had come out a few years ago, ain't nobody want to watch something set in a pandemic. Well, so I think this is what I was leading up to. I think they've really come out at a good time.
I think it's an interesting time because I do think there is The Walking Dead really was such a phenomenal hit and kind of defined that genre and was a huge success. And to come right off that, it's like I wondered, will people coming cold to this be a bit like, oh, whatever, I've done this already. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think there's a fatigue with post-apocalypse stuff, and so I think that is potentially against this show's favor. Now I personally think the quality of this show is exceptional so far.
It's wonderful,
and the source material is exceptional. So
it's the guy who made Chernobyl. Like,
no, I know, and also the other difference is the network that is airing it, right? So you've got HBO is just a stamp of approval, right?
Yeah.
And I think that carries with it sort of, I should pay attention to this. So I think it will do well in that regard. But yeah, the other point is the pandemic thing, and this game, the two stories of the games were written long before the pandemic, but the show addresses it right at the top with a brand new sort of interesting. What's his name? John Hannah shows up in a 1960s TV spot, and this is completely fresh.
I really enjoyed that.
To sort of set the groundwork. And what I loved is that that hit home a lot more after having lived through the pandemic. And also, as I was saying to you, I found personally the scene of them driving through the chaos in the beginning of this episode, as everything is going to shit. We both said Greenland, actually. If anyone hasn't seen the movie Greenland, quite a strong Gerard Butler movie.
Yeah, we really enjoyed that movie. It's on Amazon,
which has similar sort of scenes of chaos,
and we have a full review of that on.
But to me, that I found that quite powerful. I thought it was brilliantly directed and done, a great action scene. But also that to me was my fear. I had a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the pandemic.
Because you'd played The Last of Us and watched The Walking Dead.
Maybe, clearly.
I never thought that was going to happen at the start of the pandemic.
Well, I did. Honestly, that was where my mind was going, in that as soon as... I mean, there's a theory called veneer theory, that civilization is just... and decent society or whatever is just like it's a veneer, and as soon as you take away our toilet paper and you take away
our
few
flour
things, like institutions crumble and law and order fails, well then you get that, right? And you get panic, and there was a panic at the beginning of the pandemic. So for me, that feels like very raw and very real.
It's interesting because for me that was the least interesting part of the episode because it felt like a first-person video game.
Yeah,
it was like lifted out of a video game, I'd say.
How did you feel when the daughter died? Because in the game that's super powerful
really
as well,
sad.
because you play as her, so you when you're playing a video game character, that's you sort of imprint part of yourself on them.
Yeah. No, I knew she was going to
really
die
shocking.
because I knew the story from you.
And they did the same here because they tell it's all from her point of view.
Yeah, and she's brilliant.
You follow
she's
her
such a good
around
actress.
getting the watch done.
And I made a Nepo baby joke, but like she's incredible. She wouldn't have
She
been
was
cast if she wasn't that good.
really excellent.
And I think
but there was some great horror moments in the beginning of this episode.
it's incredible because Craig Mason isn't a director; like he's a writer.
He did
he's done a
fantastic
phenomenal job.
Him and the whole team.
Yeah,
because there were a few bits that really stood out to me when she is visiting the neighbors and she goes in and then she's searching through the DVD shelves and the woman the old woman in the wheelchair is out of focus behind her and you see her doing this like
I didn't even notice until you said it.
Neck craning and her mouth.
So you're
is
used
agape.
to watching horror. I was looking at the DVD shelf. I was just like, and then I was looking at the window. I wasn't looking at the old lady.
It was scary AF. And then
I just wish you hadn't bloody bored me to tears with a plot from a video game that you were playing at the time. Force some of it into my subconsciousness, and now I know the plot watching the show.
But you don't know. You might know the
I know,
you know the destination, or you know where they end up.
But I don't.
But the whole thing is the journey.
Yeah, but you say that. But like, what were we all waiting for at the end of Game of Thrones? We wanted to see who got on the throne. Like, you knowing the destination takes away some of the fun. Like, don't deny it. It's not your fault. You didn't know we were going to watch a HBO adaptation of it. But I'm definitely here to watch the rest of it anyway.
I'm sorry. I've also loved, as soon as we turn this off, I'm going to ask you what you remember, because I guarantee you don't remember.
No, I don't want to start remembering it. I don't want to trigger that part of my brain.
Oh, sorry.
What did they end on? What was the song it ended on? We'll have to do some research.
But it was an 80s thing. I loved that whole thing about the code and Ellie cracking the code. That was all.
I love that actress. She's so cool.
She's really
so
good.
80s means trouble, but does it mean that it's his brother sending it?
I don't know who was sending the radio message.
I like the stuff about his brother being far away and he's kind of seeking his brother.
He's going to a radio tower. Right, so I think it might have been it might have been from his brother.
It's really interesting as well because set in 2003, or it opens in 2003, and the daughter first thing she says is like terrorists, and you're like, God, terrorism was such a fear in America then. But also, and it's really fascinating to think about. Okay, so if this all happened in 2003. There's no music after 2003.
No.
So, like, is the last known songs like the Backstreet Boys?
Kathy, that's like a major plot thread in the second one.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I find it really fascinating.
Because
and we were looking, they were showing, just don't tell me anything.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
They were showing us like her shoes or whatever, she's wearing Converse, and we were both like, wait, so those shoes are from 2003. Converse at the best of times go to shreds when people wear them.
Well, that's the other thing I thought the show conveyed brilliantly was the scarcity of resources.
I love when he takes the little plastic bag back from the drugs.
Good. Such good world building that they had, that just one scene with Joel and that security guard. It tells you so much about just like how modern society works. There's people greasing the wheels behind the scenes, and finding a way to survive. And there's all these micro economies and sub economies happening.
You're right. It tells you so much about the economy and the society, but it also tells us so much about Joel. He's so resourceful.
He's resourceful.
He'll go and clean sewers. He'll deal drugs. Like, he'll do anything to get his brother.
Yeah.
And I think that will really stand to him. And I think
he's determined.
I'm not usually here for like a flashback within the same episode of something happening, but when they briefly showed us as the guy was pointing a gun at Ellie, and they briefly showed us Joel thinking about someone pointing a gun at his daughter, and then Joel gets really angry. I was like, for once,
it shows you his 20 years of anger and violence being second nature.
And he's always thought I should have stopped him, so he's obviously acting on that now with Ellie.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, so good. Okay.
And the other thing, it is it's a real part of the game as well, that scarcity of resources, and that's what makes it such an enjoyable game to play, because it's not like your traditional action game where you've got infinite bullets or whatever. You know, you usually have 2 rounds in the chamber and a knife, and then you have to determine, am I going to sneak past this person, or do I use one of my bullets and I don't know when I'm ever going to get it. So it's like those are the kind of choices you have to make as a player, and I think they translated that.
I remember my sister, also known as Lockdown Nissy, on this podcast, and she was living, I think her flatmate at the time, Elizabeth, watched her flatmate Megan, who used to babysit our kids, so she used to often get shouted out in her podcast. Elizabeth watched Megan play The Last of Us.
So did our friend Joe and his wife Isla. She sat and watched him play it for
so it's obviously like
20 hours.
Basically a TV show.
But that's my point. It's the narrative is there. Like it's so funny. They don't even have to do any work. It's like it's just all there. They could just make it.
What they have to do is make it a broader appeal TV show, which they're doing.
But it's there. The narrative is there.
Yeah.
And it's because it's a video game that learned from the movies and TV. So the
I really enjoyed the leader of the Resistance as well. I thought
Marlene,
she was so badass. She's like, I'm bleeding out here, but she still organised all of that while she was bleeding out.
Yeah. I love the shorthand between all of them. These quick deals being made. Can I trust this person?
They kind of know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So enjoyable. And the makeup job on Anna Torv around her, like, it looked like someone had actually punched her for the scenes. Like, how swollen. And
it's great to
like,
see Anna
Torv. It's really good. Yeah,
and you made a really good point while we were watching it, that the 2 roles she's most famous for in our mind, in Fringe and Mindhunter, are very
extremely reserved.
Very, very conservative, sort of restrained role. So this is a very different role for her. This sort of like sort of swaggering, sort of
I mean, she gets to be Pedro Pascal's love interest. Like,
what a couple!
What a power couple. Okay, we're gonna go, but in the comments, let us know what you guys think. I know you'd all be watching it. Do you think we should do more episodes on it? And can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts, and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.